as soon as I discovered that I could forge billets of Mokume to some degree of success, I decided that I needed to inform my practice heavily with past contexts and contemporary contexts, and that being differing cultures. So I made a study of Mokume Gane, and in overview, it's had a resurgence in the last sort of 50 years, predominantly through America. There's one practitioner in the UK called Ford Hallam. The rest are mostly in America. So Arne Krebs is the best, I'd say, at making rings, and I'd say Annie Wolf is the best at making sort of objects like tea cups and holders and sake cups and that sort of thing. And this is all, these I'd say are like the sort of second generation, and the first generation in America in sort of the 70s, 80s is Steve Midgett. He wrote this book, I think in the late 80s. And this book cost £600 and is out of copy, but really fortunately his son Jacob put it on his website for free. So I downloaded that, printed out the PDF, 157 pages, and basically studied it like a textbook. And that's how a lot of what I've done since has been informed, is the practices and nuance described in these pages, because as soon as you go larger scale, the problems get exponentially worse and harder to deal with. I'd say I started my research with Arne Krebs' work, and I looked at the rings and I thought that the topological pattern in here was gorgeous, but I wanted to start mimesis, or to start depicting zoomorphic figures, or in relation to the beginning of this PDF where I talked about how I was inspired by casting into material culture. And so I'd like to do that, and so I can't do that on an as small a scale as a ring, so I started researching how I could do that on a larger scale, and that's where I arrived at this work by Steve Midgett, and I thought this was pretty good. I really, really liked that, and that's something I took moving forward in my process to try and work towards. But I'd highlight this as the seminal work in Mokume Gane, or one of two or three. It's a tsuba, which is a katana sword guard, and it's got these wave patterns which have been chiseled into it, and it's got these plum blossoms which have been punched into it with a punch here. This was made in the 19th century, and it is looked at as a study, or like what everything else measures up to. So here is Annie Wolf, a contemporary American practitioner's work, and she is using this printed reference image from this book to inform her formation of a tsuba, because creating a Mokume Gane tsuba is sort of like the rite of passage for Mokume Gane artisans. When you can make these and you can pattern them in the right way, you're most of the way there. And then the next dimension above that is what I'd say is being created by the best Mokume Gane artist probably ever to have lived, but currently practicing definitely, which is Rie Hisako's work. That's because he partners incredible, I describe these as fractal, but nature-inspired self-simulate geometries carved into many, many layers of metal on a decently large scale. And that's half of it. Like, this is one half of the art, which you see here and here. And then the other half is raising and chasing it into vessels, which is a completely different art form in itself. I'd say that I did a very deep research into these three artists, or mainly these two, and this is through his website and gallery photos. And this is through Annie Wolf's blog, where she lays out things quite nicely. And, I've asked her a few questions about different things that she's mentioned on Instagram, and she's got back to me about those. And, it's good to enter dialogue within the context of your contemporary practitioners. I wish I spoke Japanese, because I'd love to ask Rie Sako many questions. But before this picture was available to me, I looked at this picture to inform my material buying in December, January, when I wanted to get to a larger scale and start making larger billets, because I basically concluded that I wanted to make a tsuba, and I would make it with the layer composition of Rie Sako's work. So I basically counted all of the layers in here, what materials they were, and tried to reverse engineer it, so go backwards and backwards and backwards to figure out what was in the billet and what layers were in there. And that was painstaking, and I ultimately concluded that I needed thick layers of copper at the bottom and thinner layers going up, and fine silver at the top and sterling silver in the middle. And Then around December, January, this video got released of a gallery a gallery open studio with him, where he broke down some elements of his process. And there was this video where he pulls out his billet stack, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is brilliant. I managed to visually decipher this piece and infer that there was copper thicker at the bottom and the different metals. And I was really proud that the research and understanding I'd gained through reading this book, through unpicking forwards and backwards in the metal process of Annie Wolf's stuff, Rie Saku's practice, and that was immensely fulfilling. And the final thing I'll add on this is that one of the best works made in Mokume Gane in terms of the Western world's concerned is the Tiffany & Co. Gold and Shakudo vase. I think it was presented in an exposition in Paris in 1990. But this is one of the largest Mokume Gane works ever made. And I think what I'm ultimately trying to get at here is I proved to myself through process-led research that I could work on a small scale. And then as soon as that happened, I dreamt big. I dreamt of going this big and adding pattern and depiction of form, which isn't really done. The most depiction of form is done in Mokume Gane currently is with wave patterns and blossoms, but no one's really painting or chiseling patterns into it that depict anything. So from this research, I basically concluded what I wanted to do, which was make a tsuba, try and put the depiction of an animal or a figure into it, and it would be a success if it was recognizable. I forgot to mention was the primary ways of knowledge acquisition for me in the first place. This sort of gave me the what's what of Mokume Gane, which is Annie Wolf's incredible Q&A of who's who. It's only 40 minutes, but every minute was so useful because she unpacked who contemporary practitioners were right now and what their specialities were, because everyone goes down a different niche within the realm of Mokume Gane. So some will make rings, some will make vases, some will make teapots, and she talks about who does what best, and it's a really, really good resource. This was really helpful in my finishing my falcon because of patination. I essentially used the same patina that she did for some of the things she listed in here, and that was really helpful. And this was useful, but Steve Midgett's book laid out how to pattern, and I already understood it, but this really helped solidify and lock in that knowledge. So I really tried pulling from as many sources as I possibly could for this, and it took a while to sort of tie them together and compound it into a body of inquiry that I could pursue new work off the back of, but it was really worth it. I'd say this is something I reference in personal statements and to people quite a lot, and I referenced him earlier as being the only UK practitioner of Mokume Gane currently, but his YouTube is quite useful on a lot of other elements of Japanese metalwork that I'm not focusing on at the moment. But his 2 videos on the zen of craft and how the hand feel or the touch of materiality and feeling metal move beneath your hammer or within your hands or whatever is incredibly grounding. Really helps me contextualize myself as an artist, because having now done that, I completely agree, and having an extremely digital practice, metalwork helps focus me and ground me in a way that honestly nothing else does. So these 2 resources were incredibly helpful in knowledge acquisition and inquiry.